I think we can really comfortably say that 2025 has not gone according to plan or according to expectations for many of us in the crypto space, with Kaspa being one in particular that has really kind of underperformed many of the very lofty expectations that were had, especially with the end of 2024 having the KRC 20s coming out and a lot of that type of stuff. There's definitely some hype and some speculation around what Kaspa could become. Now, of course, 2025 has not really had much positive in the way of price action. Now, of course, there has been the crescendo upgrade and various other things that have come out in 2025, which have been very, very good for the Kaspa blockchain, or the blockDAG. I guess we should be more specific there. But we just haven't seen actually anything move that way in terms of price. So I want to discuss a little bit about why this could be, some of the things that we have been seeing, some of the things that we have not been seeing, and then also we can look forward into 2026, see what could happen from a more macro perspective as it relates to the total crypto market, as well as it relates to Kaspa specifically, with some various upgrades planned. So let's go ahead, we'll check all of it out. First off though, I did want to discuss kind of the macro level, because as you may have figured out or understood by now, that Kaspa really does need the crypto space to be healthy overall. And this goes for all altcoins. This is not just Kaspa specifically, but Kaspa really does need the crypto space as a whole to be very healthy, to see substantial price movement to the upside. This is what we generally call alt season, right? Well, if we go on ahead and take a look, you can see here that for the vast majority of the past several years, we have not actually seen any sort of alt season happening. We did get into a quick kind of alt season in the middle of September. We also did get a very quick alt season back here in December of last year. So we'd spent probably a total of about 2 weeks over the past, let's call it 15 to 18 months in alt season. Everything else has either been in Bitcoin season or kind of somewhere bouncing in between. We really haven't seen any sort of sustained move to the upside or any sort of sustained run for either, for altcoins or altcoin season, anything like that. Things just really haven't gotten too frothy. There's been many different reasons as to why this could be. Some of it is that just retail interest has never come back. Some of that is just due to the economy being maybe not in as good of a place as we would need for something like an alt season to happen. There's also been other things going on. Of course, AI has been a big source of fear. We've seen gold make a really spectacular run in 2025, taking a lot of that retail interest away from crypto and kind of towards other things. Again, not necessarily a huge deal. It's just focus has been elsewhere in 2025, and it has not been on altcoins. You can even see here the last altcoin season that we got kind of prior to December is, I think we were in for one single day in March of 2024 and then back in January of 2024. So realistically, even if we were to look at almost the past 2 full years, we would have had maybe 3 weeks total, kind of in a considered alt season. And then from there, we would have had, months in Bitcoin season. That's just kind of how it's been. It's been a very strong focus towards Bitcoin and some of the larger caps as well. Altcoins not really seeing much love. And if we go ahead and we look at the Kaspa chart, you will see kind of exactly that. We actually were kind of setting up for a really spectacular, you can see here, really nice run up in 2023. Things moving actually quite nicely into the end of 2024, actually kind of towards the middle of 2024 is where we topped. And then it's kind of basically just been down only since then. Now, we did have kind of this really nice consolidationary pattern setting up that we did unfortunately break out of on that 10th of October mass liquidation event. You can see here kind of some of the lack of liquidity that Kaspa has really coming into effect here, seeing almost a 90% drop in the span of like 30 minutes, a really crazy thing. Now, of course, we did see it get bid back up, but since then we have just seen a little bit of some bleeding happening from Kaspa. We were in that descending channel. We did break out above it. We've actually held above it for a considerable period of time. So I do think, we are kind of out of this descending channel we were in, which is of course very good. You can see we might be in a little bit of like a bull flag here where we've come up. We're now starting to find some level of, kind of support. It's seeming kind of at the 5-cent range is where we're finding that support. And then ideally we see kind of a secondary move back to the upside. Now, of course, given just kind of what we just barely talked about, which is the crypto market as a whole, the macro space not being super friendly towards altcoins, we're probably not going to see anything super crazy. If we do see a move back to the upside, we'll probably see a move If I had to guess, we probably get to the 7-cent range and then get rejected, and then probably see some consolidation in this range. Obviously, it would be great to get above that 7-cent range. If you go back and you look, kind of that 7-cent range was a key level of support at a couple of different points, and we never really spent too much time below this 7-cent range, other than maybe about a week or so here, and then a couple of about a week or so here, and then maybe about 2 weeks here. Again, this is all kind of during the peak tariff fear as well. So getting above that 7-cent range would be a key level for Kaspa, and kind of having some strength showing on the chart. So we'll have to see, of course, what happens next. But right now, seeing a little bit of this bull flag coming in is a good thing to see. We'll just have to see kind of what happens next, which would be, again, finding a bottom and then starting to see some sustained moves and some pressure back to the upside. Again, getting close to that 7-cent range would be fantastic. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to talk about just as we kind of look forward to 2026. End of 2025, we really only have less than a month left in 2025. As I mentioned, I don't personally see Kaspa doing anything too crazy. I do think, if we do get a little bit of a rally towards the end of the year, that is what could kick us out of this bull flag. That is one thing that I'm looking at particularly closely. But again, you just never know for sure. It does look like, though, if you were to be pulling a long here, getting a liquidation or a stop loss, ideally, you want to be trading off stop losses, not liquidation points. But your stop loss would probably be somewhere below this 5-cent range. You would want to give it some clearance, just because those market makers love to find those wicks and kind of clear stop losses where possible. So giving it some sort of clearance would be good. But of course, this is not financial advice. You need to make your own decisions. But if you do kind of believe in the bull flag and see this kind of next leg to the upside here, that could be a really, really strong move for us to take, and could be a potentially decent trade to take. So of course, again, not financial advice. You need to make your own decisions. You need to do your own analysis, all of that type of stuff. But if you are interested and you are looking at getting signed up, learning how to trade, do all that type of stuff, I do have those links in the description below, with BTCC being the best one with a 10% bonus on first time deposits, as well as a giveaway that they are doing for the month of September. They are giving away 500 USDT split between 2 winners. So you do have 2 opportunities to win. If you do get signed up, you will be automatically entered into that giveaway. So feel free to get signed up if you are interested. But that is what we are seeing currently with Kaspa. Now, again, as I mentioned, looking forward into 2026, I want to focus maybe slightly less on immediate price structure, price action, what's happening right now, and focus on a couple of different things. One being roadmap related, and the other one being kind of this Kaspa power law. What you will notice we have seen is that the Kaspa power law does actually kind of continue to this support level continues to drop down. You could see here we were up at this kind of level right here, and that is where the Kaspa power law support really was indicating, because you could actually see it would touch right here. Then we also saw levels of kind of resistance before it broke above here. So obviously the power laws generally kind of always will auto adjust as we're kind of pushing down towards bottoms and finding new lows here. So, you can't always say, that like this is the support and it's unbreakable and it's untouchable. Like realistically, we could even actually go a little bit further down, because you will see here that there is kind of that piece that we saw back in 2022 where it did get a little bit lower. So again, just a little bit of a word of caution here with these power laws is that this is not some immutable barrier that cannot be broken. This is just kind of a general guideline based on kind of what we've seen as recent levels of support. And then of course you could see here at recent levels of resistance what this would kind of track to, kind of forecasting on into the future. And then you can see kind of what the linear regression fit would be in terms of kind of a line there. So you could see right now is by the end of 2026, we would be seeing Kaspa at $1.60. If we did kind of do a little bit of a mean reversion and maybe even kind of a bounce the other direction, bouncing off of the resistance level, as you can see, we're kind of bouncing off of the support level right now. So that is something that will be interesting, and we'll have to kind of track and see how this does. Of course, Kaspa has had a really rough 2025, as I kind of led off the video with, but we always can see, markets change. Usually right now, things are maybe too cold and things are oversold. Well, when things turn around, things might get too hot and too overbought. And so we can see that, potentially coming back around and what the upper level of that could be. So that is something that would be very, very interesting to keep an eye on as we see things turn around, again, 2026 potentially being a better year for crypto and Kaspa in particular. If we start to see the macro environment turn around, it could be a very, very strong thing for Kaspa. And this is kind of, generally what a lot of people in the Kaspa community are looking towards, being kind of this Kaspa power law of what we could see actually happening for Kaspa. Now, one of the things, I'm actually going to come back to this chart here. One of the things that I think is kind of a silver lining, and some of the Kaspa bears in the comment section, I'm sure will say this is purely cope, and it could be, who knows. But one of the things that I found interesting with this just giga wick that we saw here on this mass liquidation day is you can see Kaspa doesn't actually have that much liquidity. That is why Kaspa dropped so massively far compared to all the other cryptos, is because they had thin liquidity. And so when those auto sells came in, you could see it actually going through much of the order book that Kaspa had, which is why price fell so far. Well, that is a double-edged sword, right? Because we know that Kaspa has thin liquidity. So if a huge amount of buying pressure were to come into the Kaspa chart, we could see something very similar to this happen to the upside, where we just see an absolute massive rush to the upside. Again, I'm not saying that that is going to happen. I would say it's probably a little bit more unlikely, just because this was like an automated type of thing. Generally, when you see buy pressures come in, the markets kind of adjust real time to make sure that the order books and the liquidity walls and things kind of adjust accordingly. So I'm not expecting something like this, but what this just does show is that there is less liquidity in Kaspa than you might think. So when a little bit of buying pressure does come, we could see Kaspa really, really move. So that is one thing I also want to focus on. The next thing as we go and kind of wrap up this video here is I want to talk to you about the Kaspa R&D pipeline. We can see here Crescendo was completed on May 5th, 2025. We are now kind of working towards the high definition proof of work, 100 blocks per second. This is supposed to be coming relatively soon, Q4 2025, which we are at the end of at this point, or Q1 2026, which would be about 3.5 to 4 months from now is kind of when the end of that would be. And then we do have a decent bit of time where we are expecting the DAG Night and VProgs. Those are going to be kind of the two next kind of banner achievements for the Kaspa blockDAG. And you'll see here that that's coming in Q3 and Q4 of 2026. Now, I think this does line up interesting with what we saw here, because, we would see $1.60 Kaspa at December of 2026 if we were to hit towards the upper ends of that resistance. So that does kind of give us, some potential, type of narrative pieces that could help us push price to the upside. But again, I just want to remind everybody that we need to have the more macro environment turned around and be in a little bit of a better position for us kind of in that longer term if we were to see anything crazy like that happen. So overall, hopefully you found the information in the video useful. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what we see potentially ending 2025. Do you think we're going to see some explosive move to the upside? Do you think we're going to see some more chopping like we have been? What do you think for 2026? Is 2026 Kaspa's year? Is it going to be kind of like what we saw at the end of 2023? What are your guys' thoughts? I'd love to hear all of them, so make sure you drop them in the comment section below. And again, if you did find the information in the video useful, a like and a subscribe does help a ton. So feel free to do that as well if you want to stay tuned for more updates. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.